A Rose for Emily is a short story written by William Faulkner that was published in 1931. And this time we want to think about the title first because it really is significant to the story. So we think about, what does rose mean in the title? According to the critic Elizabeth Kurtz, it's an allusion to two symbols. So first we think about the significance of a rose for a young woman in the South in the late 1800s. And if you don't already know, in the 19th century, the giving and receiving of flowers was much more meaningful than it is now. You know, a type of flower, the color of the flower would mean something specific, and people would know what it was, which we probably wouldn't today. However, then, as now, roses were given as tokens of love or deep friendship. And if you're given a rose or another kind of flower that you want to keep, you can put it between the pages of a seldom used book to dry and preserve it. So you might do that now with, let's say, a rose or flower that you'd gotten for prom or to go to a dance or something, a special occasion. So when you put that rose in the book, it's out of sight and out of mind, but you can remember that special time, that special person, whenever you accidentally or purposefully open the book and see the flower. And since Emily Grierson is a product of the Old South, she would, of course, have participated in its rituals. In fact, you know, the rituals, the traditions of the Old South are extremely important to her. We can see almost immediately that her central character trait is denial of change. She does not like change, and she feels that if she ignores it, then she does not have to deal with the consequences of it. So then for her, because Homer Barron was the man that she loved, and he, for some reason, rejected her, she wants to hold on to him and the feelings that she had for him and he for her as long as she lives. So, like a rose, she puts him in that room, or she keeps him in that room upstairs, that rose-colored room that they find at the end when the townspeople go in. And she can always go into that room and see his corpse there and be reminded of when she was in love with him. Right? And so someone who lives alone like Miss Emily does, you know, that would be something to assuage her loneliness. When she's really feeling down, she can go inside that room and have that good feeling about Homer again, as macabre as that might seem. All right, and then the other allusion that Kurt says she sees in this title is to the myth or the legend of the Greek god of silence, Harpocrates. And so the story about Harpocrates is that he stumbled upon Aphrodite while she was making love with a handsome youth, and of course she was married to Hephaestus, so she didn't want anybody to know about it. So her son Eros bribed the god of silence to keep quiet about the affair by giving him the first rose ever created. So again, also a creation story. And this story made the rose the symbol of silence. And that has come down through the ages, right? So since the 5th century BC, a rose carved on a ceiling or over confessionals mean that what is said there is kept in strict confidence or complete secrecy. And you'll still see that term sub rosa. And so you know that means under the rose, and it means it needs to be kept quiet, right? Just like Eros telling Harpocrates, shh, don't tell anybody. And so, of course, we know that Miss Emily doesn't want anybody told about what she did to Homer. And she's got to keep that quiet. And so she keeps her house closed up. She doesn't hardly let anybody in, very controlled. She hardly ever or doesn't ever go out. Okay, then thinking about the narrative structure, we can think about this in the traditional way that I'll bring out a narrative heuristic with the inciting moment. So if we think, what is the inciting moment in this story? It would have to be when Miss Emily's father dies, right? Because that is when she is free to change her life in some ways. And we wouldn't have what happens next with Homer if that didn't happen. And then we're thinking, what then is the crisis? Well, the crisis is when Homer comes back into town after the cousins leave. And they think, of course, that the townspeople think that she has gotten married to Homer. But we know he goes in the house, he's never seen again. So for some reason, he rejects her at this point, and so she murders him with the arsenic. And we don't know why he rejects her. You know, we get the little information in the story about how he's not the marrying kind, and that he likes men, to hang out with men, to shoot pool, things like that. Some people, especially in today's world, immediately say that he was gay, right? So then that's why he rejected Miss Emily. And that's a possibility. But there's too much ambiguity in the story to say that for sure. But what we do know, though, is that, he did not marry her and take her off with him. But it could have been, again, just because he wasn't the type to settle down. He was going to move from town to town, working on different jobs. In his spare time, he would rather, play pool, like some men like to go hunting or fishing or, do some other kind of activity that men like maybe more than women. So again, there's possibility of either of those things happening. And then, of course, the climax of this story, it ends with the climax. Instead of the denouement, the climax is when the townspeople go into that rose-colored room, find the dead body of Homer Barron there, and then next to it, right, they see the iron-colored hair on the pillow. But there is an alternative way to look at the narrative structure in this story, and I think it's interesting. I think it works really well. So you could look at the sentence at the end of part 4, because it serves as a unifying device, and it separates the events of each of the parts of the story. So the sentence is, thus she passed from generation to generation, dear, inescapable, impervious, tranquil, and perverse. So the first word there, dear, okay? We know that it can mean, sweet, cherished, or maybe just the, accepted form of beginning a letter, such as dear sir, right, or dear madam. But it can also mean costly, and that's kind of an older meaning than we are familiar with right now. So in part 1, we see that Emily does cost the town money because she refuses to pay her taxes even after the Board of Aldermen, go to her house and try to persuade her. Then the word inescapable. So we know that the word inescapable means you can't get away from it, and that refers in part 2 to the incident of that smell, right? And so as Homer Barron's body decomposes, the town can't escape this testimony to Emily's presence there, right? It's so bad, it's so pervasive that they have to go to the mayor to try to get him to do something about it. And of course, we know, since they can't tell a lady like Miss Emily that her house stinks, they just go in there at night and sprinkle that lime all around to kill the smell. Then there's the word impervious, right? And so impervious means not capable of being affected or disturbed, right? So Miss Emily, in part 3, she certainly does not give way or does not allow herself to be disturbed by what the druggist tells her when she goes to buy the arsenic, right? That she has to tell, it's the law, what that arsenic is for. And then when the town disapproves of her keeping on going out with Homer, being serious about him, and feeling like they need to intervene, right? She doesn't care, right? She goes on and does exactly what she wants to do. Then tranquil. So in part 4, this refers to the years after the murder. She gives those china painting lessons for several years. The narrator remarks on how they see her sitting passively in the downstairs window like an idol, not moving, and she finally dies quietly. So they sent the little girls to learn the china painting from Miss Emily for 8 years or so, 8 or 10 years. And then, of course, perverse. And that's, of course, for part 5. And it could mean stubborn or purposely difficult or different, which Miss Emily definitely is. But it's her moral sexual perversity that's revealed in the shocking final scene. That's when the word perverse fits her perfectly, because they understand at last not that she just murdered Homer Barron, which they might have suspected along the way, but that she was sleeping there in the bed beside him.